It is important to understand when analyzing the argument put forth by Dr. Swift in his modest proposal that the conditions in Ireland he was protesting against were due to a systematic policy of subjugation by the English government, which were brought about by historical events. For it is these policies which Dr. Swift was satirizing, and an examination of these policies and their effects on the Irish people provides insights into what exactly he was attacking through his argument. Although the modest proposal was written in 1729, the first seeds of Irish subjugation began in 1652 with the Settlement Acts. The English had been fighting a civil war between the Royalists and the Parliamentarians, and in this time of chaos, while the English were busy fighting amongst themselves, the Irish decided the time was ripe to declare their independence from the English. Unfortunately for them, the leader of the Parliamentarians, Oliver Cromwell, was able to defeat the Royalists and then turn his attention to Ireland and the crushing of the rebellion. In order to forestall further uprisings, and as payment to the nobles and soldiers who had fought for him, Cromwell confiscated vast swaths of land from the Irish and turned them over to his Protestant English followers. As this representation shows, on the left, prior to the Settlement Act, the Protestant landowners were in the minority and were primarily located in the north, while as you can see on the right, in the years following this act, this reversed, with the Irish Catholics only owning about 15% of the land, while comprising over 80% of the population. While being stripped of their lands was bad enough, worse was to follow for the Irish Catholics. After Cromwell's death, the monarchy was restored, and following his brother's death, James II, a professed Catholic, ascended to the throne. James appointed Catholic men to positions of authority in the government and military, and circumvented Parliament in passing many unpopular laws. Fearing a Catholic dynasty, the Protestant Parliament invited William of Orange, a Dutch Protestant noble, to assume the throne. When William landed in England with his army, the English generals and soldiers, who were mainly Protestant, defected to his army and fought against James. James fled to Ireland, where he was able to raise the Irish Catholics to his side to fight against William and the English forces. Unfortunately for the Irish, they were again on the losing side, and this time the English were determined to keep them from causing more trouble. The result were the Willamette Penal Laws, which stripped the Catholic majority of Ireland of most of their rights and ensured that the Irish would remain poor and hungry and unable to organize on a nationwide basis. Catholics were not allowed to vote or own property, and since they could not hold elected office, their representatives in Parliament were either English or Anglo-Irish. The result of these laws was to put Ireland's economy into an almost feudal state. While the common man in England enjoyed relatively high pay and an assured supply of food, the Irish lived in hovels they did not own, alongside their animals, while working a small plot of land for their landlord, most of whose product went to pay the rent, taxes, and tithes to the Church of England. It was mainly a barter society, with hard currency being a scarcity, and starvation a real prospect for many. These policies pursued by the English government and the conditions they created were what Swift was protesting against in his modest proposal. For example, he satirizes the system of absentee landlords set up by the Settlement Act. His examples of how the Irish were unable to find honest work was a direct assault upon the penal law's restriction on land ownership. He also satirizes the English persecution of the Irish Catholics. When he is stating that they are our greatest enemy, he is lampooning the fact that the Irish were no longer any threat, yet the government continued to enforce the penal laws. By examining the historical context in which Dr. Swift wrote his modest proposal, we can see that he was not just protesting against the conditions in Ireland, but the policies that had created them.